Hey, it's Ellie. Welcome back to another video, or hello if you are new. Today, I am in part 2 of the Capybara Spa in my Summit Sanctuary Zoo. So, here we are. I feel like I mostly already have talked about the spa and the idea behind it, but just in case for some reason you're watching this episode out of order, this is the private rentable space in my spa. So the idea of the whole zoo is obviously a resort. It's a luxury resort. And this, I imagine, is somewhere, if you're willing to spend a little bit more money, then you get this little house of sorts. It doesn't really have any furniture except for the actual spa equipment or whatever I could make of spa equipment in this game. So it's got a couple masseuse tables, and it also has, there's this very large, I can't remember what pack it's in. I think it's Indian themed, but I can't recall. It's like a brass container that has water in it. Don't remember what the piece is called, but you'll see it at the end here eventually. Or will you? Actually, I think I might build that later, but you'll certainly see it in the cinematic at the very least. So that is supposed to be like your sort of private hot bath or something of the sorts, a soaking, maybe you put some bath salts in there or something. And then there's also just an empty sort of tub that in my head, that's where you have a mud bath. Obviously, there's no mud pieces in the game, so I just left it empty. Use your imagination. And then outside the little house is a fire pit and also a sort of sunken pool area where you can sit. So it is technically a part of the larger pond that I have in the habitat, but it's barricaded off. I did actually see, I wasn't sure if they were going to, but I did see the capybaras walking around like near the fire pit, and I think one had been swimming in the little private swimming area with the stairs here. So yeah, totally, it's not completely blocked off from the actual habitat. Apparently the capybaras are happy to walk in there and take a swim with you, but other than that, it is private from the guests, and there is actually no pathing through these little houses, so don't think the guests are going to spend too much time walking in and around them. As far as I remember, the capybaras are an interactable animal, and I do have guest gates, so I should be able to have this be an animal encounter, like a full animal encounter, in terms of the guests and what they can sort of pat the animals and whatnot. So that will mean that the guests have free roam to walk around this habitat. They don't necessarily have to stick on the path. So I have no idea where the guests are actually going to walk. There's a lot of areas in this habitat that the guests could walk and see the animals, so I guess we'll just have to find out together. In fact, I could probably help it along by putting some of the hand washing stations in these little houses, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I'd rather have the guests not walk in and around them and have it appear more secluded. It's obviously not secluded. There's the entire wall of the house is made of glass, so it's not like it's private or anything, but I think you get the idea of what it's meant to be. And then I spent some time building this very large waterfall, which I was just trying to bring some more interest to this area because the sightline is really bad. If you're kind of here and you just the edge of my park that I'm not going to be doing up too much, except with maybe some forest areas, and that's it. So yeah, I spent some time on this waterfall and these private little spa houses, and that's pretty much the whole episode. So, but just to give you an update, I've very nearly completed the golf course peafowl habitat. So I really only have one habitat left, which is the polar bear habitat. It is going to be one of the biggest ones. It's, I would say, similar in size probably to this capybara habitat, though it doesn't need nearly as much detail work in the actual habitat portion of it, because polar bears live in the tundra, so well, they live in a desert technically. Antarctica is a desert. So there's not really a lot of vegetation and things that I need to add into the exhibit. I may do some like dry grass and sort of simulate more of like an Arctic tundra habitat with maybe some very, very mild vegetation, but the main focus of that habitat is actually going to be the indoor area, which is going to include the wedding venue. So that's kind of the main thing that I have to work on at this point, is getting those details in. I'm so excited to build this. I have been thinking about the wedding venue, and I hope my animals cooperate with me so that I can get the perfect shot to show off my plan for this wedding venue, right? Because I have the, what would you call it? The podium of the church, you know, the altar. What do you call the front of it? Wherever the ceremony takes place. At the front of this venue, right? With the whole arch thing that, you know, is typical in weddings. Right behind that is where the polar bears are going to be swimming to get from their indoor area to their outdoor area. So I'm really, really hoping that the polar bears swim just behind. Maybe they do a deep dive and they swim exactly behind where the bride and groom will be standing in the rest of the wedding party and whatnot. And how cool would that be to have your wedding ceremony and there's a polar bear in the background? Like, oh, amazing. I'm very optimistic for my ability to do this right now, and I may change my mind by the next narration, but I hope so. I hope it all works out, and I think it will. So I have obviously the area with the ceremony, where the ceremony will take place, which I will set all up. And then I also want to do an area for a reception, which is probably going to be outdoors in like a tent, because the zookeeper tents are perfect for the kind of tent that I would think, you know, for a wedding reception. So that's where I'm at. And then I have some detail work to do throughout the whole zoo, and I haven't decided how much of the extra detail work I'm going to show, right? So there's a couple larger things that I most likely will put in, like I still have a whole staff building to make near the tiger habitat and also near the lemur habitat. There's like 2 areas that have staff buildings right now, and they're just plain undecorated and they're in full view of the guests, so I obviously have to fix that. The education area in front of the tiger habitat, so where you would have the education talks and the stadium seating, that is looking very plain right now, and I need to do something with that. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I haven't decided if I'm going to make like a whole other building or just decorate it outdoors. I feel like probably I'm just gonna do outdoors because you would, in terms of where the guests would have been, they would have just been coming from the lemur house potentially, or they might have just been coming from the polar bear exhibit and or the golf course, depending on what they did. And there's indoor areas for both of those. So I feel like for this habitat, for the tiger habitat, I probably want to stick to just having an outdoor area, especially because it also has already a pretty covered viewing platform that I also need to decorate, which I'm just not, I don't want the whole zoo to be inside, you know what I mean? So I'll probably do that outdoors, and then I have to go back to my fully indoor building with the Asian themed animals. Those, I just need some detail work inside. I need to put the roof on. I need to do a couple things, you know. There's a whole like courtyard area that I need to decorate. So I have quite a few of those larger detail oriented things to do for my zoo, and then a ton of small stuff. Like I just need to go through, I need to put more plants, I need to put more grass, I need to put more rocks, I need to potentially add fences where it makes sense along the pathway so that it looks more clean overall and the spaces don't look so empty as you're walking through. I know I have quite a bit of detail work to do in terms of landscaping around the panda exhibit, the panda habitat. So that's going to be a whole thing. And then, you know, all of the media screens that I have to set those up. And some of those are as simple as like, I have like a screen for my handicap parking spaces, and I just need like the universal handicap symbol to indicate that it's a parking space for handicapped individuals. And then I already think I got some stock footage from Adobe for my aquariums, so I'm hoping to put those in. And then, as I said, I definitely want to make some posters for my concert hall, however I manage to do that. Just a lot of things, a lot of little details that I have to do. And I feel like the small details, like me putting the signs together, is not going to be as interesting. So I may skip those in terms of recording. But as of now, I have been going through my footage recently, getting more editing done. I, previously have been probably like maybe 10 episodes ahead in terms of what I had ready and narrated. But now I took a couple days and I went through all of my footage, and I am very nearly at the end of that footage. So I think I maybe have like probably 10 hours collectively of footage, and it's all the way up until the golf course. So I'm pretty much caught up to what I'm doing currently, and I am on episode 37 right now, which is crazy to think that this year of my life that I have spent building this zoo, over a year now, is combined into 37 episodes. Wow. So I think pretty close to 40 episodes for all of the speed build footage, and then mentioned in another video, probably 2 to 3 episodes of tour videos, which is, I want to do some kind of advertisement, some kind of empty tour where everything is working and the animals are, you know, running around, but there's no guests so that I can fully show off what it looks like without guests clogging up the views and getting stuck or whatever they're gonna do. And then probably a final tour video where I go through with guests in the park and just walk around and see it for myself and talk about it and maybe give you guys a little bit more insight. Though I can't imagine what else I will have to talk about once I have narrated 40 episodes of this build. I'm pretty sure you guys know everything about this zoo at this point. I am at the point now, however, that I am seriously thinking about my next project. In fact, the other day I actually went into a new game and started working on potentially a map for one of my new zoos. I'm not really sure which zoo I'm gonna do next, but I think it's most likely going to be the New England themed zoo, which is going to be a buddy series with a New England style theme park in Planet Coaster 2. So I've been working with the dioramas because I didn't realize, I don't really use that mode all that much, so I didn't realize with that I was able to make like a really cool coastline and then some nice rolling hills that I can build my zoo on. I don't know how it's gonna work, but I'm gonna give it a shot. If it turns out horribly, I'll just have to start a new zoo in a regular sandbox game. But for now, yeah, I'm gonna try to use the diorama mode to make a zoo. It's not going to be a very large zoo, so I think it should be fine to use the diorama. I've also seen a number of zoos that seem to use the diorama pretty effectively and have like pretty large zoos in the maps and not have too many issues. So I hope, very much hope, that everything works out like that. But as I said, it's not going to be a huge zoo. I think when I looked at it last, I maybe had like 8 to 10 animals that I was going to put in the zoo, and that's it. And they were all animals that are in the New England area, or close enough to that I feel like it's reasonable that those animals might be in a New England zoo. And it's going to be framed fully as a rescue rehabilitation center, right? So it is going to be, you know, if animal control finds, say, a moose injured and they need to send it to some kind of animal sanctuary to just rehabilitate and have medical care while it rehabilitates and recovers, and then with the eventual plans to release it back to the wild. That is kind of the premise of this zoo, right? So I will have the American standard donkey, pretty standard, someone might say. If the gray seal, so I was right about that. The moose, the North American beaver, of course. Lots of beavers in this sort of area. Raccoon, red fox, and skunk. So that is all the animals that I'm planning to have in this zoo. And then I have a couple of exhibit animals that make sense to have, like the American bullfrog. We have a lot of amphibians in this area, so some of the butterflies like the cloudless sulfur, the monarch, and then the diamondback terrapin, which is a snake, I think. And that's it. So just a few exhibits, just a few habitats. Some of them are going to be a little bit larger. The moose habitat is probably going to be pretty large. The seal habitat is going to be on the coastline, so, and again, being that this is a rehabilitation center, it's going to be fairly natural, I would say, in the appearance of the habitats, right? So in this one, although I tried to make the habitats look very nice and make them look very sort of wild and natural. I also wanted there to be a sense of, you know, manufactured quality to all of these habitats, so none of them look like I, you know, just took a piece of, like, a plot of nature and this is where the animals live now. It does look like you specifically created these habitats with all of the, you know, especially the big limestone structures that I have in a lot of these habitats. But that is not going to be the vibe of the New England Zoo. It is going to be fully, you know, the guest comfort and the guest, you know, viewing priority is not a concern in this zoo. It's not going to be, it's going to be much more natural. But the other zoo that I really, really would like to make soon, and this is the only other possible zoo that I will be making next, because I have a couple ideas, but it's either going to be the New England Zoo or it is going to be a zoo based on the Long Dark. I may do them at the same time, but I am not sure yet. The zoo for the Long Dark would definitely be a different sort of vibe to a zoo, because even though the New England Zoo wouldn't focus on guests, it would be built for the capacity to have guests. I don't think I would do the same if I were to build a zoo based on the Long Dark, because if you don't know, it's set in an apocalyptic world, so the idea of like having a bunch of people roaming around doesn't really fit the vibe of the game. And I also think I would have to do a lot of creative things with the settings in that sandbox zoo, because it would be, you know, very much so a free form, you know, all the animals are going to be in one giant habitat. Don't know how I'm, you know, I probably will turn off all the things and barely have staff. I'm not sure how I'm gonna frame that yet. Probably what I'm gonna end up doing is putting staff buildings in caves, because there are cave systems. Like, I might just make it on the other side of the railway tunnel or something like that. I don't know. It's gonna be complicated. It's gonna require some finesse to make it not functionable long term. It's never gonna function long term, but it needs to function sort of for an intermittent period of time so that I can get some cool shots and have the animals, and, you know, just yeah, it's gonna take some time, but I'm sure I will be able to figure it out. I feel like that project is going to be more so like a few episodes long of speed build, because mostly it's just going to be me manipulating the land and then building a couple locations. There aren't a lot of locations in Mystery Lake, which is the region I would like to build in. But anyway, you know, that is about the end of this video. I might be a few minutes early, but I am going to sign off here. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more content from me. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye!